Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and before I introduce tonight's guest, I have a couple of announcements. Tomorrow there are a couple of interesting events. There is a Smart Land Use Forum at Dimmock Hall on the Coast Guard Academy campus from 3:30 to 6 p.m. And I think it's co-sponsored by the environmental clubs at Conn College and the Coast Guard Academy and the New London Environmental Educators Organization. So that should be good. Also, at 5 o'clock at the Senior Center, there will be a presentation by the New Jersey firefighters who are working for the Where Angels Play Foundation, who are considering building a playground in New London in memory of one of the 26 students who died in Newtown, and that is from 5 to 6 p.m. And then next Tuesday, there will be yet another Riverside Park workshop at Winthrop School from 7 to 9 p.m. And you know, the plans, every workshop, the plans gel a little more, but it's not too late for people to come and give their feedback. So that's what's coming up in the future. Tonight, my guest is Mark Roberts. He's been on the show before in many, many different capacities. And tonight, though, he's going to talk about some really interesting new things related to community economics. So welcome back, Mark. It's always fun to have you. You recently took on a role with the New London NAACP. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I became the Economic Development Chair for New London NAACP, which I think I may be outside the state Economic Development Chair. I'm the only other one. It's not a role that's easily filled within the NAACP. They tend to be very legislative and labor-oriented, but not so much in terms of straight-out community economics. So I joined.
I think it would be a natural.
That's what, yeah, you would. And I'm amazingly welcomed into it, which I went to their annual meeting in December, and they said, why don't you join? And I said, well, I'm a Native American, and I look like a white guy. And they went, the NAACP is not about race anymore. It's, that's the 60s. We're now about fairness and economic justice for everybody. And the CP is people of color these days.
Yeah.
And there were white people. In fact, I didn't know the NAACP was started by 50 people, 41 of which were white people.
I had no idea.
I was surprised too. And they go, yeah, it's always been about social justice and civil rights, and everybody's civil rights. And so they welcomed me, and it's really fun. So in January they said, listen, we've been looking for a couple of years for somebody who could chair economic development, and you got the right background, you're it.
I was going to say, you've been interested in this kind of thing for a long time, as long as I've known you.
Yeah. And I was trying to interest them in a project I was working. And so, as economic development chair, it's the perfect platform to work at, which is getting work for people who need work. So it all kind of like came together.
Okay, so what's new on the economic development front?
Well, the project I'm working particularly is, it's become really clear that we've overbalanced in the favor of globalization against the communities. There will always be a global market, there will always be global environments, but we've done it at the sacrifice of local communities.
We're seeing that more and more. Even policies are now treating corporations preferentially over people and communities.
Right, and it's gotten to the level of, I'm a capitalist at heart, but what we've got is exploitive capitalism. It's not.
It's maybe corporatism or something. I don't think it's really what capitalism was intended to be.
No, I don't either. It's just gotten carried away. In fact, I've met folks like one of the managing directors at Goldman Sachs who left in the early 00s, and he's embarrassed he was ever associated with them. He said, when I went into Goldman Sachs and grew up in Goldman Sachs and became a managing director, the heads of the banks were world statesmen. They were concerned about the state of the world. They literally were statesmen. He said, now they're about themselves and how much money can they make. And he said, it's a shame. And now they really need to be managed.
And I suspect it isn't just Goldman Sachs and the banks. I think if you look at corporate cultures in a lot of the big corporations,
absolutely,
people who have been there for a long time see how the social conscience is just degraded.
I would challenge you to think of any important industry in this country at all, any important industry, and find one that's not dominated by 3 or 4 companies and everybody else is chasing crumbs.
And fighting each other while chasing crumbs half the time.
Yeah, there's a few people at the top of each industry who really control it now, and they've got so much money, they control the legislation around it, I mean, they control the environment they live in. And when Obama says it's a rigged game, boy, he's got it right. That's exactly what it is.
It is a rigged game.
Yeah, against us.
So, okay, so you're taking one small step to try to help, maybe not solve the whole problem, but sort of help us on the road to solving the whole problem.
It's a pilot project from a country point of view. So I spoke in depth with Michael Schuman, who is in Washington. He's a national economist. He's also an attorney. And he's written a bunch of books on local economies and what it takes to build local economies. And he's supporting this approach as very smart, and one of the first ones he's seen that's likely to actually make a difference in terms of local economic impact. Because I said, I'm not going into this just to create another, like Berkshire Bucks or something like that, or Utica Dollars. That it's cute and it gets people more aware of their local trading, but it doesn't really make a significant difference in the economy.
And I think it has more overhead than was originally anticipated.
Yeah.
The Willimantic had the Thread City bread for a while, and it was successful for a few years, but probably about 10 years ago or so, some of the people who had started it, they were exhausted and they just couldn't manage it anymore. It's a lot of work.
It is, and that could happen to us too. That goes with it. There is work that's involved with it. The biggest problem, though, is getting an adequate amount of economic activity to actually start to make a difference. Otherwise, you feel like you're constantly pushing and pushing and pushing and not getting very far. And so you're stuck like below 1% local impact. And so our goal is to get above 1%. And so to do that, we're focusing on most of these local economic currency systems, if you call them that, or credit systems. It's the same thing. They're all based on trading stuff, consumerism. It's a very consumer-based model. The approach we're taking in New London is a work-based model. So it's it ultimately comes back to the same thing, but it's a very different kind of an approach, and we think it'll work. So it's worth trying. As Michael said, you don't know until you really try it, but it has the potential to lift and significantly break through that 1%.
So I guess, can you talk a little bit about what it is?
What it is, how it works?
And how does it...
At its most simplistic level, it's a community-oriented system, and it's all about, it's called a community credit system, because we create our own credit rather than money's created through, every time you create a dollar, it's credit. Right. A lot of people don't understand that money is credit these days. That's it. Currency is noise on the system, paper currency.
Right.
So we're creating a credit account for people, and the simplest idea is, like if you asked your neighbor to do the brakes on your car in exchange, you'll mow their lawn or something, that's an exchange. That's a work exchange. And so we're starting by doing work exchanges, but on a broader scale within the community. But one of the very important elements is people want to know each other. And so as we can, and so we're finding that, we found that with Fiddleheads, it creates a tremendous sense of community, and more of these things are springing up everywhere. This is similar. People want to know each other.
That makes sense, because I think that there's a lot of mistrust of our paper currency, and I think it's because there isn't a lot of trust, really.
I don't trust it.
Right. I mean, it's not just backed by gold or silver anymore, and there's a lot of mistrust of the government and the Federal Reserve. So it
a
seems
lot of
as though
manipulation that goes
capitalizing
on.
on
Yeah.
community trust
Right.
might seem like a better deal.
Well, and it's more fun. And it's really interesting. At first, everybody goes to, we say, who has spare time and capacity to do something, do some kind of work, call it. People always start with what they've done for their last job or something like that. And it's like, no, what else do you do that's fun? Like, here's some examples of stuff people are doing. Singing lessons, cooking. I've got a couple ex-teachers who not only do tutoring, which is more in their work set,
Sure.
but they also will come to your house and cook food for a party for you, Southern style. They're experts
Wow.
at Southern cooking. There's everything from one woman from, I believe it's the Mashantucket Pequot tribe. Yeah, she's the executive secretary on the council. Helps business startups, and there's a whole range of things people do to help each other, and so we just maintain accounts for people. And one of the things we do not do, which most of these systems do, is charge fees. So there's no fees associated with it. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. You get trading bonuses.
Oh, wow.
So it encourages people to use it. And we eliminate them in the later stages when it's really huge. But in the early stages, to encourage people,
Yeah.
at the end of the month, we look at how much credit did you put out there yourself? How much work did you do or you took in credit? And give you an extra 10%.
And so everything can kind of get kept track of
Yeah.
electronically
Exactly.
without us having to pass around pieces of paper.
Right. And if you can also do it, you can also print it out as like a gift card if you really want to carry something around to feel better. But it can be done in an online account. It's pretty straightforward and simple. And and it just keeps track of what you've done, what you've earned, and gives you access to everybody else who's in the system and what they may have to offer. But right now we're doing a tremendous amount of hand-holding. So it takes one of us 20 to 30 minutes to bring somebody in because we talk to them about what they can do and what's fun for them. And the idea is work should be fun. I mean, and usually
Right.
we all have stuff we love to do. So-
Right, not necessarily what we get paid to do.
Exactly. Well, this is the way to get paid, to do the stuff that you like to do. You
As
know?
you do the job, and then you get credits that
Yeah, you can spend. And
you can spend by getting someone else to do the stuff you don't
Well,
like to, or
exactly.
don't know how to.
I do taxes for people, for example. I have somebody coming in and cleaning my house. That's nice. I don't like to
Yeah.
clean the house. And when both me and my wife are gone a lot, so the time to do that's hard. But I don't really want to make time for that, to be honest. I mean, but I don't mind sitting down and doing somebody's taxes. Or help them form a corporation, or help them put a business startup. And so I personally do a lot of services like that in the system. But there's we have a giant list now of different kinds of services. That's just stage one, where we have people get used to the idea of exchanging their services with each other. And as we build up several hundred people who are all doing that and become used to that, we built a very small community of people at that stage. We then bring in food. And so I haven't asked for it yet, but I'm the vice president on the board of Fiddleheads, and I've talked to the president and I've talked to the general manager, and we haven't worked any deal, but everybody's open to discuss it. And this project's also a similar project is working in Greenfield, where the Greenfield Co-op has already come in. I mean, they're so excited they can't see straight. And Fiddleheads is also concerned about access to high-quality food for everybody.
Absolutely.
And so this is this helps fulfill that mission for Fiddleheads. So it all plays together. So at stage two, then people can spend the credits in Fiddleheads. They can spend the credit. There's a number of local restaurants who've approached me wanting to play in this game.
Wow.
And now they might limit the acceptance of credits to their weaker nights or something, kind of like they do discount
Sure.
coupons. But so what? If you can spend your money at a nice restaurant nearby,
Right,
that's
if
cool.
it has to be Tuesday, so be it.
Yeah, exactly. And so then as people start accumulating more credit and just the whole volume of that economy gets larger, then we start allowing people to do things in there like sell cars, say value, used cars under $5,000. So if you've got an old car and you want to get rid of it, we can trade those around within the community and do that on credit. And that won't break anybody.
Right.
And then as just the whole thing gets bigger and bigger, then we can just raise the limit on the size cars people trade. But it might be pretty cool for people to be able to just trade cars too.
Yeah.
Pick up a car for your kid or something like that, or whatever. And then the next thing would be landlords with vacant space to get housing into the thing. And get all the things people need slowly just expand. But it has to reach certain economic sizes before it becomes practical to bring those things into the
Right, so
equation.
you start smaller and then
Yeah.
build up.
And if we were to bring fiddleheads in the beginning, everybody would just work and go buy food, and fiddleheads would have all of this credit and nowhere to spend it.
Right.
And so it wouldn't work.
So you really do need to balance who brings
And
the
we-
skills that come in as well.
Exactly, and we all need to participate in it. It's not some outside manager who's just making it all work. It's got to be, we've got to be mindful that if we pig pile on fiddleheads, then they'll leave.
Yeah. Now, you kind of suggested this, but I want to talk a little bit about why now? What are the problems we're seeing in the conventional system that make this kind of thing seem like a really good idea at this point?
Boy, where to start? The whole decrease of the middle class since the late 70s is, I mean, been chronicled everywhere. Our earning power keeps going down. We disguised it for a while by putting women to work, was the idea. When I was a kid, only one family member held a job. Now, 2 family members must have a job. And that's just because they're earning less. But the family gets more, so it gets disguised.
Right.
And our earning power, and even that's not going up anymore. So it's
And of course, other costs are going up as a result. I worked in childcare, and I loved working
Right.
in it. However, that is a cost that 2-parent working families have, and it's not
it's
a
huge.
small cost.
Yeah, it's huge.
And when I grew up, once again, it wasn't that much of an issue because most of the moms stayed home, or if they didn't stay home, it was because they really were doing something that was meaningful and paying enough to get their children looked after.
Well, you raise a good point, which is one of the trends. I spent 15 years as a franchise consultant. And boy, what I learned in the process was franchising dominates local businesses in a way we don't realize. It's 9 out of every $10 taken in goes through a franchise.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that money rarely stays in its community where the outlet is.
And the whole model of how you run a successful franchise is you dumb down the jobs. You make them so a trained monkey can do them. And they call that a system. And yes, it economically works for the owner. But what a crummy place to work. And it's gotten so pervasive now. It's like all businesses think that's a good way to be, is to have employees who could be brain dead and still do the job, you know, and it's like crazy. It takes the fun out of everything. And so it's and I guess in fairness to the people who do the work, it seems gone. To my mind, it's very clear that workers are being exploited at this stage. And the union movement has been pretty well hurt. Collective bargaining is almost dead. Some of the unions I've talked to say it is dead. Don't kid yourself, kid. You know, it's just going through a few final throes, but collective bargaining is a huge challenge now, and it's not an effective strategy anymore at all. And so probably ownership is going to be the key, I think, for workers, which is why I'm on the board of Fiddleheads and why I got in there in the first place was many years ago in a chat with an economist, he said the future is going to be in different forms of business than the straight corporation as we know it now, which has only been around 100 years. It's not very old. And he said cooperative is one of the most interesting models out there. And I go like, what's that? It's like, that's like farmers and stuff and granges. And he goes, no, check it out. And so I did, and it's like, oh my God.
It's amazing to me. I lived in Israel in the early 70s, and I was a member of a kibbutz. And I was so amazed when I came back in my late 20s and worked in typical American jobs. And that people just assume that there's a management pyramid that is the way it should be.
Yeah.
And I happen to work in a couple of jobs that really a much more cooperative approach would have been much more efficient, would have made people happier. But it's like we're brainwashed to think that the only way that we can organize an industry is if we have a CEO who has a couple of VPs, and most of the rest of us are peons in the bottom.
Right.
So,
But the corporation today is, as probably everybody knows, the purpose of a corporation is to increase shareholder value, is the words
Right.
you always hear, right? That means the stockholders get the profits. And they have other agendas, but they never quite get to them. It becomes all about shareholder value, and that's kind of it.
right.
Now, the other thing most people don't realize is shareholders today, if you were to take a class on stock trading, particularly day trading, they will tell you that 95% of the stock market is not people anymore. It's hedge funds and giant trust funds and what's called big money. It's not people. Even the wealthy people are still, that's not them. They're
Wow.
in 5% of the market. So if you're going to trade, you want to watch what the big money's doing and don't get in their way. You just get rolled over. And so companies are doing it for, it's the rich helping the rich, really, at the very top. A co-op, on the other hand, doesn't have stockholders.
Right.
It has member owners, like Fiddleheads is owned by the member owners. And the member owners run it, and they do the governance. And a key part of being a cooperative is you invest in your community. You are a core, it's one of the 7 principles that you must adhere to call yourself a co-op. And so isn't that a lovely idea of you have a business that's for the benefit of the workers in it? It's nice.
Right.
It's what a great concept.
And it doesn't have to be a nonprofit.
No,
but it can be a
typically not.
responsible
Yeah.
citizen.
Yeah, and Fiddleheads is just under doubling every year. I mean, it's growing at an amazing rate. It's providing a very good value. It's high quality food is expensive to start with, but as people come from outside the area, go, wow, they're really cheap for what you're getting. It's inexpensive,
They try to keep their prices down, and of course, my biggest problem with Fiddleheads is you cannot just run in and run out and grab 2 items.
Right,
You
that's right.
have to allocate some time because it goes back to what you were talking about
Right.
there's community involved, and you never walk in and don't meet 2 or 3 people you want to talk to.
Right, right. And if you go on Saturday, you just plan extra time for sure.
Oh yeah, because
Yeah,
all
so-
the farmers market people are there.
Well, and a lot of people just come in on Saturdays, so you wind up standing there, you see so many people you want to just chat with that it's like you can't get out.
Right. So
it's a nice
sometimes
feeling,
that's a
too.
downside.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is that everyone who walks in does feel like it's their store.
Right.
There's a real sense of ownership
Right.
among even those of us like myself who isn't really a working member,
Yeah,
but I still feel like
Yeah.
I own
Yeah.
the store in
yeah.
part.
Well, you can be a member without working anyway.
Right.
But,
And you can shop there if you're not a member. So that's something that I think that word is getting out, but some people still
oh, that's a
don't
good
know
point.
that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we decided to, 5 years ago when we really started it, to keep it open for everybody.
I'm not sure what that was, but you know what? I think we can, in a few minutes, we'll go to the community calendar. It might take a couple minutes for them to get that set up. So maybe you can talk just a little bit about what you have to go through to start up this kind of system.
Oh, that's more than a little bit, but
Well-
I typically interview somebody for, or one of us does, for 20, 30 minutes. So we talk about what is it you like to do, what's your work, what's your skill set, what do you think you could bring to the party, and we talk to them, and we talk to enough people, we're mindful of what other people need as well. And so we'll find people dismiss things as unimportant, and oh no, there's people looking for that, When people are good at something, they tend to dismiss it as trivial. like, oh yeah, everybody can do that, and it's easy, and it's not, and or people don't want to do it. And so we try to understand what they can do, and then the same thing, what things they would need, what things would help them in their lives if they could get other people to do that for them. And a lot of us need prodding to do. I don't need anything. I got myself covered. Thank you very much. And it's like, well, okay. So here's the kinds of stuff other people are doing for friends of mine and stuff like that. And then they go, oh, like I had one last week that, oh, you mean I can get singing lessons? Oh, and I can get guitar lessons? And and then she had a list of like 8 different things she wanted. And so it was pretty cool.
So people discover that they have wants and needs that they
don't
never
know.
even knew
They
about.
just assume they can't be satisfied, and that's that. But when you realize that somebody else in the community likes doing that and will do it for you, it's like, oh, that's kind of nice.
So if someone is watching and they're interested in getting involved, what should they do?
Simplest thing is send me an email. We'll contact you. Can she put my email address up, or so it'll come up in a second. It's easy.
Oh, we were, and we are. Well,
Okay, there's it's just my initials, MGR at firstvp.org.
okay, and now we will go to the community calendar, and we'll talk about this in more detail, and feel free to call in.
They say to keep your eyes wide open.
Welcome back to Thinking Green. I'm here with Mark Roberts, who is talking about a pilot fair trade credit system that's getting started in Connecticut.
Yep.
And we were talking a little bit about, before the calendar, about who can join and how you go about it.
The simplest thing to join, we have a website that's just going up this week. It's the program is called Fair Trade Credits, or FT Credits for short, or FTC if you like, which is kind of funny. And so if you just go to ftcredits.org, you can learn all about it, and in a few days.
Okay, yeah, not tonight, but
That's right. So they're still working on the site. The trading site where you can go on and see everybody if you have an account is the same ftcredits.com. So they're kind of just matched.
that makes sense.
So it's easy.
Are there
It's
any
easier.
particular skills you're looking for, or?
Yes, we don't have somebody who does auto body work, which is a particularly good one. A lot of people would like to get inexpensive auto body work, and auto body people like to do it. Also, I just haven't gotten around to talking to one yet. But because, for an example, how it works, auto body people make their money on your big insurance claim. And so they're very happy to have you come in and do work for you on credit in a community sense, because you'll get to know them, and so then
Right.
if you have a big accident, you'll think of them. And that's where they really make the money.
Yeah, so
The
it's,
little jobs aren't that much for them.
no, but it's word of mouth and getting the reputation out.
And getting them known in the community, yeah. And so, so I've got a few that I know that I figure I'll go talk to, and just haven't gotten there yet. That's a skill. All kinds of online skills are very useful. We have a bunch of people doing it, but we can always use more. People who are good with Facebook, who can do postings, people who are good at photography, who can help take photographs of events for various organizations and people and businesses. Some of the more interesting ones is talking to Monte Cristo Bookstore. They'd like people who are willing to help them in the bookstore on credit, and they'll offer credit for the books they have.
That
Dan's-
sounds like a no-lose
It is.
situation.
It is for people who love books, and the ones who want to work there are the ones who, you kidding? What a dream job to hang out in the bookstore,
And I get to take some books home with me.
and I get to take books, yeah. And yeah, you just go into a library and ask anybody who want to work, you know. And I had a similar conversation with Dan's Ice Cream, for example, on Bank Street. And so, but that's a further stage. I don't want to bring them in too early.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of healthcare traders, people doing various kinds of, usually alternative healthcare. You can't yet get brain surgery that way, but
Right. You might not want to.
yeah, you might not. But
So you touched on this, but I want to talk about how people benefit from having this as opposed to just doing things as we've always been doing them, at least for the last 100 years.
it creates new economic activity, and it creates local economic activity. If you look at when this recession happened, when it really slammed in at the end of '08 and '09, the states that did the very best were the states that had the most local economy, the strongest local economy, led by North Dakota.
Sure. I mean, they're lucky enough to have a state bank.
Right. And smart
Where-
enough to have a state bank.
Yeah, almost 100 years old,
Right.
state bank, and other
Right.
states are just starting to catch up,
Right.
maybe in concept.
But North Dakota, year in, year out, runs at an unemployment rate of typically 3.2 to 3.4%. When the country went to 10.5%, North Dakota went to 4.2%. They went up 1 whole %. And within 12 months, they were back down to 3.4%. And that was it. And you look at the other states that have strong local economies, and they exhibit a similar phenomenon, which is they took a hit, but it was nowhere near as severe as everybody else, and they recovered from it quickly.
So where is Connecticut in this continuum?
Yeah, we're not so high. I didn't even look. I don't think we're in the bottom 5. So we're not
Well,
that
that's
bad.
good to know.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're certainly not in the top 10
No.
or top 15.
And New London, particularly this area, is we're hard hit because a lot of our economy is just outside. Now we have the opportunity to make more and more of it local, because we have farms. We have a lot of little independent stuff here. And a number of business people have talked in terms of, in the future, it'd be great if New London moved more and more towards an entrepreneurial haven for college grads who are coming in who can live in the city because it's a friendly city. It's a beautiful city. It's a pretty city. We need to change a few regulations and stuff so that you can have a business in your home more easily and things of that sort.
Our zoning isn't yet really friendly to the kind of stuff that actually has made New London great.
But it could work. The downtown is a great place to live and work, and if you could take one of these storefronts, and they're too big for a small startup, so they're typically a couple thousand square feet, where you want more like 500.
Right.
But if we could just chop them up and put 4 businesses in there or something, or a home and a business kind of a thing, then it can work. And you could live in the back and have your
And then you wouldn't need a car.
Then you don't need a car, right. And so we need a little more work on mass transit to make that really work for people.
Right, and walkability and bikeability, because
that's right.
Really in New London, I guess from Ocean Beach to Conn College is the greatest distance you'll ever take and stay within city limits, and it's about 5 miles.
Yeah.
So in theory, if the place were friendly to bike in, which it isn't.
That's right, it's not at all. You take your life in your hands on a bike in this city.
Now, I used to be a bike commuter, and I biked from Pleasure Beach to L&M Hospital and every day. And that was about a little over 4 miles. And it was a pretty nice bike ride, yeah. But I wouldn't go to the other, like crossing Bank Street, it's just, it's just frightening, actually.
Well, and just imagine going through the modest morning traffic we have on a bicycle. It's like, I don't think so. Yeah. We have one bike lane in the whole city on Montauk Avenue.
And a lot of the parts of the city just don't seem very friendly for walking as well. There's no shade in the summer. So both mass transit plus making the alternative transportation more friendly.
Yeah.
Would really do a lot towards.
And a little more infrastructure support for businesses, but I think that would quickly rise.
Infrastructure support is something the city is kind of weak on. I keep thinking they should spend more money just making the sidewalks and the road grid right.
Yeah.
And then maybe not spend money on big elaborate projects. But so
you're right. That would make New London a really interesting place.
But what you're doing also has the potential to make New London an interesting place.
Well, it's born from a really simple theory, which is there's a whole lot of us in New London. If you think of all the people in New London, there's a whole lot of us with skills and time. Everybody in New London is not employed up to the limit, whatever their limit is, to the degree they'd like to be. And so how do we take advantage of that? Because we need things from each other, and we have capacity to provide those things to each other. So it's a failure of our economy that those things don't get matched up. That's the point of an economic system. It ain't doing it.
Yeah, so maybe we can talk a little bit about the things our economic system are not being done by our current system.
It's very hard for businesses to get loans these days. Although the money's really cheap, it's not if you're a small business and trying to borrow money. It's not cheap at all. There's not a lot of forgiveness and support in the system. It's designed for really big operations. That's much easier to get money if you're a big operation than a small one. And as this little currency system or credit, it's a community credit system, grows, in the beginning stages I mentioned how we give credits to people. When they extend credit, they get an additional 10% at the end of the month. Actually, if you use the credit, you get an additional 5%, so you get 15% on the transactions you do. As the system gets larger and big, when we have businesses that are participating in it and all, because they can pay their employees partially with it as well. At that stage, we take the credits away because nobody needs the incentives anymore.
Right.
And then instead, all the members who are members of this program come together in like a town meeting, maybe once a quarter, and decide what to do with all that money, because it's still there. And so we can then use it for grants, if we want to give a grant to a social organization or something like that, or they can They can use it for low-interest loans for new businesses that everybody feels are needed in New London, that they'd like to see come here. And it would be up to all of us to decide what do we want to do with this money. Because it's still there. It would be a whole economic base that we can play with.
And one of the things you mentioned was that so many people are unemployed and underemployed.
Right.
And the match is just, people are struggling, and yet often the services that they could provide are needed.
Yes. I mean, does anybody believe that there's no match? With all these people, with all these skills, and all the needs we have, that there's no match? That's hard to believe.
I think our system in general is not good at matching.
Yes, exactly.
You know, I think about, and this is a little bit off topic, but you think about the joint problems we have in New London of homelessness and empty buildings.
Right.
And you think, why can't we solve two problems at once?
Right.
Fill the buildings,
Right.
get people off the street.
This is a little extreme, but nonetheless, it's my view. I think the concept of a job as we know it is dying. It's a flawed concept. It's run its course. It worked when it was there. The idea being you work 40 or 50 hours, really 50, 60 hours a week, doing some menial task repetitively over and over again for somebody you probably don't really like a lot. And that's a job for as little as they can get away with paying you. Work, I think, is what it's really about. And we all have varied interests. There isn't one thing we want to do for 60 hours a week. It's a whole, given a choice, it's a whole variety of things we'd like to do. And the mix of it makes it more fun. You can see this in action if you go to any of the islands. Block Island, for example. And the way the island economy runs, there's nobody there with just one thing they do. They all help each other. And so they all look at, well, what does everybody need? What am I good at? And they step in. And so, I mean, there's like one guy on Block Island who is, he does, I believe, legal work. He makes Adirondack chairs, and I think he's a mortician also. It's three things that aren't like close to each other. and that's pretty typical. They all have 3, 4 different things they do, and they get a little money from each of them. And as we get our health care covered, so we don't need to have a job in order to have health care, then that enables us to then be able to look for work rather than to look for a job.
Well, and a lot of the jobs you're talking about, they're a product of the very industrialized
That's right.
way of producing things, which I think is going to become impractical.
To some degree, yeah.
To some degree.
It'll take a long time to go away, but of course.
But just shipping products all over the world is going to get impractical. Energy costs are only going to go up, and scarcities in what you propel transportation with, it's going to be a problem. So I keep thinking, notebook, pen, cups. None of this stuff was made within 100 miles of New London.
Right.
But there's no real reason why it couldn't be.
Yes.
And if when transportation gets really prohibitively expensive, then we'll want small-scale businesses that produce these things we need every day.
Well, and some of the fun things of products have gone away. There's no uniqueness in anything now at all. Everything looks the same everywhere. You go into a shopping center in California, it looks the same as a shopping center here. The stores are the same, the products are the same stuff. There's like, when I was a little kid, all stores sold different things. Now they all sell the same stuff. And it's like, it's getting boring. The uniqueness is not so much there.
And in a historic city like New London, especially, people don't come here for us, because we're a better strip mall place than places nearby communities. We actually can't compare with many surrounding communities in the strip mall category. They're much better than we are. So, we need to do something that really makes use of our uniqueness.
Right. And I think the global economy will still exist, of course. There'll still be huge companies. It's just the balance is now skewed way too far over in that direction at the expense of local people, that's all. And we need to pull it back. We need to get our economies locally stronger. And so the next time the big boys screw up and cause another recession, which is going to happen, we haven't really changed anything. then hey, we'll get through it. You know, it won't be. It'll hurt us, but not so bad, not so badly.
Now, as we talk about local economy, how do you envision different local economies nationwide and worldwide will interact in the future? Because I know that this kind of initiative is happening everywhere and not just here.
Yeah, these kinds of community credit systems spring up, yeah, virtually everywhere. We're already interacting with, because we use the same software, with one that's based out of East Haddam. And so you can go look and see what the people are offering there, and if you want to go trade with them, you can. In fact, we've set it up on our system. When you go in, it encourages you to go look at that one.
Oh, wow.
And it just says, you know, don't forget, it's called, you know, our exchange is NLCT. Tricky.
Right.
And theirs is called CSSE, which is Connecticut Sound Shares Exchange. And there's, I don't know, a little under a couple hundred people, I believe, on that system that are trading services. Some trade farm products, so we can interoperate with them. And as more of these spring up, we can all interoperate with each other still. It doesn't prevent that. But you're going to tend to go local if you can.
For some things, yeah.
Yeah. But the beekeeper has extraordinary honey out in East Haddam. You'll make the effort.
Right.
And that's good. That's the way it should be.
Right. And
Yeah.
if you want to get your nails done or whatever, you're probably not going to want to drive an hour to do it if
Exactly.
you do it here.
Exactly. Or somebody to come clean your house. You know, maybe they're not going to come from East Haddam just to clean your house for an hour
No.
or something. You know, but
But honey from East Haddam to New London, and
Right.
maybe music lessons from New London to East Haddam.
right. And but like for what I do, we're to help put a startup business together, form a corporation, that kind of stuff. Yeah, you drive an hour, sure, all day long. Wouldn't even think about it.
Sure.
So yeah, there's some things that are more readily available and some that are not, but it all still supports the local economies, and that's the whole agenda. And ultimately gets us being able to contribute to the growth of the economy by increasing the number of startups. That's one aspect I
Yeah.
didn't mention that we're doing, by the way, is just as people describe the kinds of work they'd like to do, and we find groups of them that want to do the same thing, there's 3 of us now who are prepared to help them put them together in a company and form like a little mini small co-op, get an administrator, and so, say 4 young guys, actually women get into this now too, who want to be movers because they like the physical exercise and it's really good. We can create a little moving company. And so they don't have to be individuals, and they can operate as a small company, so we'll set them up.
Oh, that sounds great. We have about 5 minutes, and I wonder if you want to talk a little bit again about how a person who's interested in this can get involved.
There's 2 ways. The simplest way is send me an email, and I'll connect up with you and tell you how the system works and bring you into the system. We're starting to do, or not, we've been doing parties, like think Tupperware party, where you just go to a party with your friends.
Oh, yeah?
And so if you're interested in doing a party, you just throw a party for your friends. One of us will come out and talk about the program and how it works, and it's a community-based thing, so it makes sense to do it in a community way. And let's see, we have one party at my house on April 17th. We have another party April 30th at the Mohegan Hotel, in the ballroom at the top of the Mohegan Hotel. So that'll be a big party. And so,
Yeah.
So that would be a way to come in. It's
So people, if they're interested in participating,
Yep.
those should just email you.
just email me or go to the website. The week it'll be all up, of course, on the website, and you'll be able to see where the different parties are. If you're interested in throwing a party, send us an email. That's one of the things that's on the exchange for free, is just want to throw a party.
Yeah.
And so we can bring you into the system that way. And so and we'll then continue it. One of the things the people who are currently in the system have expressed a lot of interest in is doing these periodic parties where everybody can meet each other. And so if you want somebody to clean your house, you kind of want to meet them before you do anything. You just get a feel for the person. And so we'll probably do quarterly big parties where everybody can come and just meet each other and talk about what they do, and it'd be fun.
Now, the New London program is still considered a pilot, right?
Yes, yes.
At what point do you graduate from pilot to?
When we get when we start able to be to giving grants and making loans and starting businesses up and funding them, At that point, I declare victory and say, okay, we've clearly got this working.
Yeah.
I'm already being called all the time to speak about this project around the state anyway. So I've testified up in Hartford a couple weeks ago. There's a session with Wesleyan and Middlesex colleges are coming together with students in 2 weeks, I think. So they're having a session. We're talking about it there. So it's getting out.
So what kind of reception are you getting?
Oh, everybody wants to jump on it now. And so I encourage them that we can only run one pilot, so we're running it.
Right.
But you can start a community exchange yourself. I'll be happy to show you where the tools are. Get people learning to exchange with each other, and then we'll help you get up the harder stages as they come along. And so
there's a little bit of support for other groups that want their own pilots and their own
it's rising up
communities.
Everybody seems to want to get involved in this one way or another. It's amazing.
Well, it really does sound like there's no way to lose.
Right.
It's good for people, it's good for the community,
Right.
it's good for the economy, especially in times of stress, I imagine.
Right. It keeps you busy. Well, you know, the greatest thing I've seen that's come out of this, which is what really makes it for me, is not the economic benefit people get. That's good, that's nice. But the feeling of self-empowerment they get that, oh, I'm worth something, I'm contributing, I'm not sitting home out of work feeling crappy, you know, and that's really uplifting to see that happening.
Yeah, and once again, it doesn't just benefit the individual because the whole community benefits from
Exactly.
having people's skills being made use of.
Exactly. We're in this together.
Well, that is great. I don't know if we can put Mark's email address up for one more minute, but we are on our very last minute. So thank you very much, Mark, for
Thanks.
coming on. It sounds pretty exciting, actually,
It is.
and hopefully you'll get deluged with emails.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see it. Oh, there it is.
Yep.
mgr@firstvp.org. So thanks again for coming on, and maybe
Sure.
you'll come on again once before we go off the air in June.
Happy to.
To talk about some more economic stuff.
Sure. Absolutely.
So for all the rest of you, I'm not quite sure when we'll be back. Next week, we will be at Winthrop School at this time. But probably in 2 weeks, we'll see you back here. And thank you again, Mark.